This is about exploring what your future connected to Japan can look like. We are so glad that you're here. We have some phenomenal speakers here today that are going to go ahead and talk about their path, their love for Japan, how it all got started. So today we do have Erin, Genevieve, Becca, and Tesia. They all worked with the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program, the JET program, and we'll tell you a little bit about this space. It is a conversation. So it's not a class, it's kind of just hearing different perspectives, how they got through their path, and maybe you can take tidbits and bring it into your own journey as you go. Now, there is no right or wrong path, it's just a conversation, a panel conversation. We'll have time for questions and answers afterwards. So I know a lot of you have jumped into Experienceify as well. You can build your skills through there, but really a lot of the fun is meeting the people that have already gone through the journey and can give you a little bit of insight into what that looks like. So these are our panel questions. We're just going to go ahead and jump in because I know that's why you guys are here. We will go ahead and start with some introductions. So I'll pass it over to Tesia first in order to kick us off.
Hi, my name is Tesia. I was in the JET program in 2008 for 5 years in Aomori City. And I actually had taken Japanese in high school and kind of was like, I need to get Japan out of my system. What should I do? Go to JET. Thought that that would be done with Japan, but as I'm sure many of you know, you just fall more and more in love with Japan. So after JET, came back to the States, and now I work for a travel company called Oddly Travel that does private customized trips. So I'm a Japan specialist, as well as Thailand and Maldives, because when I lived in Japan, traveled to Southeast Asia quite a bit. And but yeah, I get to go back every year to see hotels, go to new locations, meet guides, and it's kind of the best of both worlds. I still have Japan part of my daily life, but living back here, located in Boston, so living back here in the States, but getting to talk about Japan every single day with people, and then also hear their stories of their first trips to Japan or going back. And so it's just a really fun way to have Japan as part of my life every day.
And we'll pass it over to you, Becca.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Becca Guttentag. I was a an ALT for elementary and junior high schools in Oita Prefecture from 2014 to 2018. Since coming back, I attended a graduate program for localization, and I can go into more detail about that during the panel questions, but that journey has now led to me working at Riot Games, best known for games like League of Legends and Valorant, where I work as a localization producer on Valorant, ensuring that the game is translated and accessible to all of our players outside of just the native English, including Japanese players. So very excited to have the opportunity to talk and explain how I got to where I am and how JET helped me do that.
Hi everyone. My name is Aaron Woolfolk. I was an ALT in Kochi Prefecture from 1992 to 1993, and I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and so there's a lot of cultures, a lot of cultures there, including Japanese culture. I was first really introduced to Japan in second grade because my teacher was Japanese American, and she introduced the class to elements of Japanese culture. So that's how I first became interested in Japan. And then growing up, I was really into film, and I discovered as a teenager, Japanese films, classic Japanese films, and that made me really interested in Japan. And I was particularly interested that even though these films, like from the 50s and the 60s, they were very Japanese, but they were also very universal. I identified with the characters in those films, and that fascinated me. And then in college, I went to University of California at Berkeley. I got the opportunity to to apply for the JET program, which I did, and I went to JET and I went to rural Japan and I had a fantastic time there. And I was going to stay much longer, but I got into graduate school and I left. I went to New York City and I studied film. But I felt that my Japan experience was incomplete because I left so soon. So I decided I was going to go back, and for my thesis project, I was going to make some short films in Japan. And my instructors were like, no one's ever done that. You can't do that. Be realistic. But I wound up doing that. I actually made two short films. I figured I'm going to go back. Might as well make two short films. And so I did that. And I made a feature film in Japan. And I have several other film projects I'm developing now. Um, it's kind of funny because ever since I left in 1993, almost every year since then, I've been back to Japan at least once a year, sometimes two or three times, except for the pandemic years, really. I made really deep ties with my community in Japan, in Kochi, and I'm still very close to so many of the people who I first met more than 30 years ago. And you all could have that kind of experience too, all you young people who are thinking of going to Japan. But it's a very big part of my life. I'm very grateful to Japan. Yeah, so I'll stop there, but I can answer more questions if you have. But happy to be here.
I'll go ahead and pass it on to you, Genevieve.
Okay, great. Hello, my name is Genevieve Murphy. I was a JET in 2007 to 2010. I actually met Tesia and Marty there. We were all in the Aomori Prefecture. And yeah, it was really a phenomenal experience. I'm an educator. I was trained in education, and so when I went to Japan, it was really a unique opportunity to be able to use my skills as a teacher, but in a different setting and different dynamic. But I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And yeah, while I was there, I met some good friends who worked at an international school nearby, and that actually introduced me to the international school system. So once I finished my time in JET, I wound up getting hired at a school in Taiwan. At an international school. And so I'm actually in Taiwan. I've been here since 2010. And yeah, my journey has just expanded in the cultural aspect. So I'm also the co-founder of an education nonprofit organization where we connect classrooms virtually. And we began this journey also around 2010 when Skype was first kind of being introduced into the world. And so my co-founding partner, who I also met in Japan, and I realized that we could use this technology as a way to connect classrooms virtually. And so we've grown that organization over the years, and we've connected hundreds of classrooms and thousands of students in virtual ways. And yeah, I think for me, the most meaningful takeaway that I had from Japan was just the depth of cultural awareness and understanding, and how beautiful learning and experiencing different cultures was. And so that really was the true inspiration behind us starting our nonprofit. And yeah, I've had that privilege to be able to continue to carry that torch forward and bring that opportunity to lots of other classrooms and students. So yeah, that was a huge influential part of my life that I still continue to carry forward today. So thanks.
And what I love about this is that you can see that everyone came from different angles. And you have some that got interested in Japan when they were in elementary school, and some that studied in high school, and some that got into it. They just learned a little bit about it in college, and they're like, okay. But once they go, you can see they're all still connected. It's still such a big part of their lives. So that being said, I would love to hear a little bit more about what first made you become interested in Japan? And I know you touched on it a little bit, but what was that first intrigue? And I'll pass it over to Tesia first.
Well, actually, I first got interested because everyone was taking French and Spanish. So I was like, I'll take Japanese. And I liked the characters. I was kind of artistic. Um, and then, so I was just studying it to study. But then went there. First time was in high school as a senior and went to Tokyo and Kyoto and had host families and really fell in love with the people and the food. And then when I continued in college, I did a homestay outside of Osaka and just I was shocked at that point. I'm like, oh, it's not just history and anime and there's people breakdancing and there's sports, just the food and people, and just really drew me in with that because I wasn't really interested in anime or history. So I kind of was like, what do I like about it? And it's really the people and the culture and the food.
Do I jump on? Okay, we were just passing as we go. So for me, my story goes back a little bit because I was actually born in Okinawa. I had parents who were physicians who were stationed in Okinawa as part of the Air Force. So when I was about 2.5 years old, my family moved back to the US, which was just enough time for young toddler me to have vague memories, but not enough to really have understood life in Japan. So I grew up on stories of my parents talking about their time, talking about the culture that they experienced by getting off base and really engaging with the people traveling through Japan when they had time. And it instilled in me such a, you know, rose tinted glasses view of Japan that followed me as I was growing older, as I became more interested in Japanese pop culture. And as I got into college, because where I went to high school, they did not offer Japanese. So those of you who are studying Japanese right now in high school, consider yourselves very lucky. It was only once I got into college that I was able to actually start learning the language and see it as an actual path forward, as something that I could go to Japan and, build a skill linguistically in. So during my third year of university, I did study abroad in Tokyo. I lived with a host family and really fell in love with not just the university lifestyle, but that homestay experience, making it so that I wasn't just seeing the college experience in Japan. They took me traveling to Yamagata. They took me during my in between semesters period. I traveled to Kagoshima to work at a shochu distillery as an internship. So that 1 year really put it on the map for me that this isn't just a place I go for vacation or a single year. There are so many facets to this country and this culture that I'm not done with yet. So it was natural to me that once I got into my last year of university, I tried JET as an option. And I thought I was only going to be there 1 year. 4 years later, I found myself wanting to stay even longer. And to the point that Erin made earlier, it is one of those places that I just can't not go back to whenever I have the opportunity. So that's my long journey. I guess with that, I'll pass it off to Erin.
Thank you, Becca. Yeah, so as I said before, so I think for me it started when I was in second grade and I had a Japanese American teacher and she would teach us the things about, her background. So she would teach us things about Japan, like, oh, this is a matsuri, this is what that is. This is ikebana, this is chigirie, this is art where you tear things. When you're what, 7 years old, something like that is very impressionable on you. It's something, even if you don't realize it, it stays with you when you learn things like that. And then, as I said, when I became a teenager, I really got into film, and I discovered international film, and I discovered Japanese films. So I watched a lot of Japanese films, by, Kurosawa, by Ozu, by a lot of others. And it so fascinated me how you had these movies set in this foreign culture, but hey, I can identify with that character, what that character is going through. I was like, wow, it's universal. So then by the time I was in college and by the time the jet opportunity came up for me, I was ready. I was like, oh yeah, yeah, Japan, of course, why not? And so that's what started me on my way. And I was ready for jet and I actually had wanted to stay for a long time, but I I applied for graduate school, film school as an afterthought, thinking I'd get rejected and then I'd go on with my life and have no regrets about not applying, and they actually let me in. They accepted me. So I had a long, should I not go, should I go? And I went to New York City for graduate school, but Japan was still very much in my mind. I was always thinking about Japan. And so I decided I was just going to start going back to Japan kind of every year. And I've done that basically. Yeah. I mean, like I said, for basically the last 30 plus years, except for the pandemic years. And, I still have a community over there who, like, we keep in touch all the time, and whenever I go back, everyone gets together and things. So, and it was rural Japan, and that's something else we can talk about. I laugh with my fellow Jets, urban Japan versus rural Japan, and and we have our biases, and they're both great. And wherever you go, in Japan, you'll have a great experience. I can speak about the rural experience, but so I really established a community there that I'm gonna go there next month, and I'm gonna be hanging out with my friends, and we're gonna be, we're gonna have we're gonna go to izakayas and stuff like that. So it's something that it could really be a part of your life, basically for the rest of your life, you know. And no matter what you do in life, no matter what career you go into, you can make Japan a part of it. I have a friend, a Jet alumni. He was a coroner here in LA, after Jet. He worked for the coroner's office, and he found a way to make Japan part of his career as a coroner. Now he's a professor in Japan, teaching, science of, being a coroner, whatever you call it, coroner's science, whatever. But so no matter what you want to do, if you're studying Japanese, if you're interested in Japanese culture, anything you do in life, you can make Japan a part of it. Okay, so thank you. Yes.
Cool. I'll jump in. Yeah, so for me, my story was kind of a little bit different, as everyone's story is going to be. I didn't really discover Jet or Japan until I was in college. And I actually was introduced to a friend of a friend who had just gotten back from her experience in Japan, teaching over there. And I just thought it was an interesting story. I was like, oh, cool. Wow. And so she kind of shared a little bit about her experience. And then I didn't really think anything else of it until fast forward maybe a year later or so. And I was kind of going through some ups and downs in my own personal life. And I was journaling a lot during that time as a way to kind of help me process these experiences. And as I was journaling, I recalled that conversation, and for some reason, and I was like, oh, teaching English in Japan. And I just kind of wrote it in my journal, and those words like leapt off the page and like stuck in my head and wouldn't let go. And it just became this mantra almost, where I was like, oh, teach English in Japan, teach English in Japan. And I had like very minimal understanding or experience or interactions with Japan. Also, like Tesia, I wasn't really interested in anime or anything like that. But it just became this driving force. and I just did like this deep dive of research and, what do I do? How do I do it? I'd done a lot of traveling around the US, but I'd never traveled abroad. And so I had this mindset where I thought it would be a good idea to go live abroad for a year before I started my career. So I would go to Japan for a year, have this international experience, and then go back to the States and start teaching full time and blah, blah, blah. Well, that plan got thwarted because once you got into the JET program, also similar to Becca, 1 year turned into, for me, 3 years. And then now I've been in the international schools and living abroad since 2007. So my poor family has had to be very understanding of my 1 year extension every year for the past 20 something years. But yeah, it was just it became a driving force that really transformed my life in ways that I never ever could have imagined. And it continues to inspire me each day. So yeah, that was a little bit about how I joined the JET program.
I love it because you could see that everyone comes from different areas, but it started with curiosity, right? It started with conversations. So you're talking about you met somebody from Japan, you talked to somebody that had done the JET program, or you went over there. You're like, something sparked your interest. You go over and you travel, you see the people, the communities. You see the rural life, the urban life, you see the differences. And it's not one thing. As you mentioned, it's not like in one of our programs, people talk about, is there a cookie cutter JET? No, there's not. And you could see just from these stories that they come in with different interests, different drives. They lead into different passions as they're going. And that's part of the fun. But they all started with that curiosity so that they took that next step, right? And that goes into the next step. How did your experience in Japan influence what you're doing now? Because I know that all of us, we came at different angles and we're like, let's go for JET. Started with 1 year, ended up sometimes for many more. So how did that path lead to what you're doing now? And I'll pass it over to Tesia.
Yeah, I mean, of course, with my job in travel and creating people's trips, living there is very helpful for what I do, and also having my clients put faith in me because leading up to their trip, I give them pre-trip information, what to pack, what to wear, cultural sensitivities, what's rude, what to expect. Because a lot of the people I work with were either in sales, either like travel or kind of a mixture. So I definitely was the travel side with the background of Japan experience, whereas some others get sent there and learn it. But it's definitely a lot easier just to talk about it easily, not have to Google questions just by having lived there. But I think mainly the like clients having so much trust in me, having lived there 5 years, and just bringing anecdotes of, oh, my time in Aomori, or this is my favorite food. So also at JET, you get to travel all around. One of my predecessors, he told me you have time when you're in Japan. So if you want to learn guitar, learn guitar. If you want to do something else, if you want to travel, do it. I learned to curl. One of my best friends from Japan was just in the most recent Olympics. So that's what I did with Aomori. So in addition to travel in Japan, you can really kind of learn and lean into whatever you want with the time you have there.
Yeah. So in my case, as mentioned, I had a bit of that nerdier pop culture interest in Japan. And I think growing up, it was something that I saw as a hobby and saw as something that would not inform my professional life. When I was teaching in Japan, though, teaching in the mid 2010s, gaming is a big thing that the students, especially in junior high school, elementary age, that's something that they are incredibly interested in. But it's also something that, Japan produces a lot of games themselves. But something that was growing more and more popular was seeing games that were brought from English into Japan gain a lot more popularity and notoriety. So it became this interesting topic of cross-cultural exchange between my students. It was something that inspired them to enjoy English, to say, you know, just like I learned Japanese by playing games in Japanese, you could do the same for English. English education doesn't have to just be rote memorization of things in a textbook. There are so many ways to engage with languages and understand different cultures, different entertainment biases, different zeitgeists in different countries through the games that they create and the language that they use. And so coming off of my teaching experience, something that had just been a passing thought to me, which was knowing that there is a localization team usually quoted in the credits for video games, was a thing. But then realizing it could be a path for my professional life going forward, I really glommed onto that and really tried to find the avenues that I could to pursue that as a professional career, to the point where now I am one of the few localization producers at my team whose job it is to essentially go to the game teams and do kind of the reverse education to the developers here, to remind them and keep them informed of the things that the mentalities, the cultural considerations that exist in the countries that we're trying to get our games sold and popularized in. They can't just think from a singularly American English perspective. They really have to consider what it means to address another culture, another audience. So I consistently carry the thoughts of those teenagers that I taught. They're now my target demographic for the game that I work on. So that consistently plays a part. My experience in Japan plays a part in the work that I do here to make sure that every player of our games feels as though it was made for them, no matter the language, no matter the culture.
Yeah. You know, growing up, I always loved storytelling. I love to tell stories, and I guess it was in college I decided I wanted to become a professional storyteller. And then I went to Japan, and I decided, oh, well, I would like to tell stories involving Japan. You know, not only Japan, because I tell stories also set in the U.S., but I really wanted to tell stories involving Japan. There's a much bigger thing that Japan did for me that affects my storytelling, but it also affects my entire life, is that, you know, growing up in the United States, you're always taught you're an American. I'm an American. You have an American perspective. Japan taught me that I'm a citizen of the world and that there are many different perspectives aside from the American perspective. And, you know, and you should respect that. So Japan taught me that. And that has also had an impact on my storytelling, on the films I've made, of the scripts I've written and I'm writing and things like that. Um, um, so, what was I going to say? Well, some people, they ask me, well, you know, okay, who are you to tell stories about Japan? You know? And I say to them, well, I don't consider myself an expert on Japan. I do not. There are a lot of people, a lot more, more smarter people who can opine about Japan. But I think I've been involved with Japan long enough. I've been there long enough that I have a perspective on Japan that I think people might be able to respect. You know, many of my favorite movies about life in the United States are made by non-Americans. Okay. They're made by people who weren't born and raised here, but they've been here long enough that they have a perspective on the US that is legitimate, you know? So I kind of see my storytelling about Japan in that vein. I'm not an expert, but I have a perspective on Japan. And I've been happy that, many Japanese people, like the audience, critics, producers I work with and stuff, they appreciate that. And they say, oh, this thing you put in your film, we've forgotten that, but from your perspective, you've kind of, you've shown a light in it, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I appreciate how Japan has influenced my storytelling, how it's influenced my philosophy, not just of storytelling, but of life. And so that's what I hope to offer Japan, is that I bring my own perspective of someone who's not an expert, but someone who's been there long enough to, have something to say maybe. So
And for me, yeah, so when I was living in Japan, there was a small grassroots organization called Everest of Apples. And this organization was founded by Jets several years before I joined. And its mission was to bring education opportunities, like equal education opportunities, to students in Nepal. And we worked with a specific school there in Haitauda. And they, part of their work was to increase girl education in that rural area. And so as Jets, we kind of passed this torch on year to year to the incoming Jets. And I was a part of this organization for the 3 years that I was there. My third year, I became one of the co-directors and led a small group of us who were available to Nepal to volunteer at this school and to meet the students and the teachers there. And so we wound up doing this volunteer trip, and it was also very enlightening in a lot of ways, a whole new culture and different experiences that were wonderful. Nepali people are very warm, very welcoming, very kind. And this family that we worked with were also very generous. And so it wound up being a really unique and dynamic experience. And it was through that experience, actually, in the other travels that we had done in Japan, while we were in Japan, to the other countries. We just realized like the richness of these cultural experiences. And so that really was when this idea sparked for our nonprofit. And so again, that was around 2009. I think we had that trip. In 2010, I left Japan, came to Taiwan. My co-founding partner moved back to New York, but we just worked together. Like that was kind of the catalyst that brought this concept together. And over the years, it's grown and changed and shifted. It's a very fluid, fluid concept, but the essence of it has always been connecting people, connecting students, and bringing these cultural experiences. And so we've actually continued to work with different schools and teachers in Japan as part of our cultural exchange programs, as well as other countries. And so, yeah, we also focus on social and emotional learning because there's a lot of soft skills that you need to know and understand when you're interacting with people from different cultures and backgrounds, or you yourself are putting yourself in these vulnerable situations of travel and new cultures and new experiences. And so we really focus on instilling and kind of fostering those kinds of skill sets. So yeah, it's a big, huge part of my work and has been for a while. Yeah. So yeah, that's how it continued to be, how Japan continues to be a part of my life in my work today.
I love it because you could kind of see there's some people that had these passions and interests before they went to Japan. Becca and Aaron are kind of like, okay, I love these things. I go over there. You found communities, you developed those, you networked. That really spurred your profession now? And then Tasha and Genevieve were saying, you know what, we were going out there and they said, find some hobbies, do something, experiment, see what is of interest to you. And that helped create your professions where you're going now. So again, it's kind of that curiosity, it's being open, it's going out and trying new things and meeting people, right? It's that next step. And sometimes that's uncomfortable, right? Sometimes going out and trying new things or talking to new people or not and not knowing the language perfectly, sometimes it's kind of like, it's a little bit scary, right? But you still push through it and look at this. Look at where you can come and you can grow from that. Now, talking about that, a lot of you mentioned actually skills and mindsets, perspective that came from living in Japan. So what skills or mindset helped you the most while living or working in Japan? So I'll pass that over to Tasha.
Yeah, I think what you just said, Marty, is exactly it. I think just being open and curious. And I think living in Japan and just traveling to Japan or really any different culture in general is just observing. I think that's a good way to see what the other people are, what the people of the country are doing, um, picking up on how they communicate, what they like to do. But because when I was in university, I studied East Asian languages and cultures, but was mainly focused on communication. And so I think just, and I'm sure Aaron deals a lot with this in the movies because I took a Japanese cinema course studying abroad, and those movies are very contextual. There's like no words, and then they just end, and then you're like, and that's the meaning of life. Um, so I think really watching, especially in Japan, the people, how they act as a society. I mean, there's good and bad things about all cultures and pros and cons. So Japan's not perfect, but it does have a lot of great aspects of their community and their people. So I think just being open and willing to learn, and also, like you said, make mistakes, talk to people. I think we taught like our students in Japan, like it doesn't matter about your pronunciation. It doesn't. It's fine if you say R's and L's wrong. If you use it in a sentence, people are gonna know what you're saying. So I think that's like the biggest hurdle to get over is not to be scared or shy because no one actually really cares.
Yeah, I'll say I will definitely +1 to that one, especially since I was never the strongest language learner. And I was in my Japanese classes in college. I was good, but I was not great. And it really took to getting to Japan and really being willing to immerse myself and make mistakes to really pick the language up to the level that I did. To the point where now I found myself coming back to grad school, and my Japanese teacher in grad school said, "Why do you talk like a hick?" And I was like, "Well, because I picked up the local dialect, and unfortunately, it has really stuck because I immersed myself so much." But there are things that you learn from not just, engaging with the language and the culture outside of the classroom. I learned so much inside the classroom, and I think the biggest lesson I learned, or the biggest muscle that I built, was the ability to work and think on the fly. I am consistently praised by people that I work with for the fact that they're like, we changed those slides right before the presentation and you went off without a hitch. How did that happen? I'm like, well, my first experience in elementary school in Japan was getting to a school and expecting the teacher to have a lesson and having her tell me, "No, we thought you had the lessons. It's your first time teaching elementary school and it starts in 10 minutes. Good luck." So truly, I think that to go even beyond just the hard lessons and the book lessons that you find in Japan and on this job in particular, there's something to be said about the ability to think on the fly, act on the fly, react on the fly, because especially this is a teaching job with young kids, and they mess with you. They try to mess with you. And there is a level that you build a good reaction time through interacting with the students in the classroom that not only builds your skills, but builds rapport with the students. So I think those would be some of the biggest skills that I picked up and that carry me forward even today.
Yes. I think I learned a lot about patience. I learned a lot about keeping an open mind. And I also learned a lot about think of the big picture. Okay. So, I'm Black. And so a lot of people here in this country where they like you live in Japan or you go to Japan all the time. Don't they hate Black people and stuff like that? And and because there've been a lot of kind of since the 80s, there have been a lot of stories that are drummed up in the media here. Oh, they had these mannequins that mimic Black people. Oh, these entertainers did blackface and stuff like that. And I tell people, well, you know, you're a foreigner. So there's Japanese and there's foreigners. So that's one thing. And of course, there's a hierarchy in foreigners. But you know, whenever I was confronted by something that in this country would be probably be considered racist or an insult, the people when that happened in Japan, in most cases, they're knuckleheads everywhere, everywhere. But in most cases in Japan, they weren't trying to hurt me. They weren't trying to insult me. They were actually trying to reach out to me. But, at the time, I was like, where I lived, I was like the first real life Black person most of them had ever seen in their life, you know, and they had questions, they had curiosities about that. So people would say things to me like, oh, please show me your best slam dunk. Oh, please show us your dancing skills like that. I had basketball coaches who've been teaching school basketball for like 30 years asking me to teach their students because they thought that I knew things that they didn't know. Okay. But, but I remembered that, okay, well, they're getting these images, they're getting these stereotypes from Western media. It's not, they're not trying to insult me. They don't know. So I have to kind of be an example for them. And I kind of have to, I have to show them, well, I'm an individual and I do this and I do that kind of thing. And sometimes when it went deeper, I'd explain things to them. I remember once my mom was visiting and a woman who was kind of like my Japanese mother, who was very close to, and I'm still close to. She loves music, and my mom loves music. So they were talking about music, and this woman said, "Oh, and another song I like is this song. It's called Old Black Joe, that American song, Old Black Joe." And my mother looked at me and she said, "Should I say something?" And I said, "Yeah, say something, teacher, but be, just be calm about it, respectful." And so my mom calmly explained to her, "Well, that's a racist American folklore song about Black people." So I have like a lot of instances like that, but I learned early on you have to be patient. You have to look at the big picture. As a Jet, you're kind of there as a cultural ambassador. And in most cases, they weren't trying to hurt me. They weren't trying to insult me. They were trying, like I said, they were trying to reach out to me. And so you have to look at the big picture. So often, because Japan is wonderful, but it's not perfect, and there are often things that happen there that might try your patience. But you have to remain calm, and you have to remember, you know, think of the context. Things that things that are said in the U.S. that would have one effect. It might be a different context if it's said in Japan, because the people there don't have the same history of what they said being insulting. So just thinking about things like that and conducting yourself that way and being calm and thinking of the big picture. And some of the people who said those insulting things to me when we first met, they are among my closest friends today, you know, because, because we're very close, they weren't trying to hurt me or something. So I would say it taught me a lot about patience and looking at the big picture, thinking about things in context, you know. So that's something else that Japan did for me, taught me.
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of piggybacking off of what Aaron just said, as far as this cultural awareness and perspective. So for me, I also had a huge understanding around the concept of perspective during my experience in Japan that truly altered and changed my life forever because I realized the power of perspective and how it really is our choice in how we choose to filter the world that we see and that we interact with and how we make those choices. And so 2 points real quick. One was, so JET became this driving force for me to kind of get my degree and finish my university courses. And I was really looking forward to it. And then getting accepted to the JET program was this exhilarating thing because it had been this goal that I had for a few years. And then I received the email with my placement. And so as you know, with JET, you can apply for the program, but once you get accepted, you don't choose where you go. And so all this excitement and adrenaline around, yes, let's go, I'm in. And then getting that email where it's like, congratulations, being a JET, your placement is in Aomori Prefecture in Fukuoka. And I'd gone to Japan once to visit prior to applying to the JET program just to because of curiosity and seeing could I really live here and blah, blah, blah. And so we went to Osaka and Kyoto and Nara and Kobe, that Kansai area. So this was my image of Japan. And so when I got Aomori, I raced to Google it. And of course, I grew up in Southern California. And so to see these walls of 12 feet of snow and reading that the highlights are skiing and picking apples, it really kind of shattered this vision of my life in Japan that I had created in my mind. And so I really had to kind of it was shocking. I had to sit with it and be like, huh? This is not what I was expecting at all. And do I really want to do this? Do I want to continue to push myself forward in this dream that I had created for so long? And yeah, so at that point, I did kind of talk myself through it. And I realized, okay, this is a 1-year commitment. If it's terrible, you come back in a year and it'll be fine. It's just an experience. And so that helped me kind of get through it until the day of the orientation prior to flying out the next day. And my orientation was in Washington, D.C. And we had this icebreaker activity where she was like, all right, everyone, let's count to 10 in Japanese. And I couldn't. And that was another moment where I'm like, what am I doing? I can't even count to 10. Why am I putting myself on this plane to go throw myself in this other side of the world and blah, blah, blah. So there's going to be these mental challenges that are going to come up in your own mind is going to have the potential of getting in your way. So being aware, being mindful of your thoughts and what those thoughts are bringing to you and how those thoughts are impacting your emotions and how they're impacting your beliefs in yourself to be able to overcome these challenges or get through this experience or be mindful of, the vulnerability and the challenges that come with being in a new culture. So just remembering that it's just an experience, it's temporary. This too shall pass, even if it's challenging. Breathe through it and really just try to remind yourself that this is a unique opportunity, and perspective is really the key. So in this challenging experience, how can you also view it as a learning opportunity or an opportunity for growth or new wisdom or whatever it might be, because that is an opportunity you wouldn't have had if you were sitting in your comfort zone of your own culture and family and things like that. So use this experience to grow personally as much as possible as well. So yeah.
I think that's really important because as you're thinking about it, sometimes we have this perception of this is what life is going to be like, right? This is what Japan is like. But as you're talking about it being open, Tasha mentioned observing, looking around, right? You're talking about different contexts. Becca was saying that you go into your learning just as much outside of school as inside of the school, with the students, with your community, everybody you're interacting with. And these aren't skills that you necessarily have right away or are really strong, right? They're skills that we will build as we continue to interact because we're open for it, right? That's really important, and reflecting on it. So Experienceify, check out our modules before you go. You don't have to be ready right before you go. Look into it though. Then you can build that context. You can build that patience and awareness and start to think about how can I look at this instead of getting upset at something right away, say, what might this mean in this context, right? How might they be coming at that? What is their story? We're talking a lot about storytelling, right? It's important to think of other perspectives. And as Erin mentioned, we are cultural ambassadors. As we go over there, they are learning from you as well. So how you respond or react to things is going to be very important because they're seeing you as someone from the US or someone from another country, right? They're seeing you and they're learning from you. So how do you want to represent yourself, your country, right? So being open and having that skill set, knowing that they will grow stronger as you go out there, right? As long as you put a good foot forward and listen just as much as you speak, right? So that goes into our next question. What advice would you give students who are interested in living or working in Japan? So I'll pass it over to you, Tasha.
Yeah, I mean, if you're here or watching this, I think you're already a good a good step forward in doing that. But also, just see what's out there. Like when I was in high school, I did Youth for Understanding, which was a kind of exchange program. So probably similar that you're in high school doing this. This is great. Anytime there was like a Japanese festival or activity, just getting involved. You don't know who you'll meet, hear the stories you'll hear, connections. I remember on my JET resume or application, you have to put references or how did you hear about it. So just having those connections are always helpful as well. But just, yeah, not getting discouraged. It's going to be hard, like Genevieve said, like you're going to learn from every experience. And we all sound like we had good paths and a great JET story and cool jobs now. But I got my first choice university. I didn't get in early, then got in JET. I didn't get in, and I had all this Japanese experience. They rejected me the first round, and then I got a call later, and they're like, "You're in." Same with my job now. They told me I didn't have sales experiences, and a couple years later, applied again, and when I was the top seller of Japan, I was like, remember when you didn't hire me? And you learn from being rejected and how you can get better, but also how to spin your experiences to work for you as well. So even though I think we all sound like we've had cool experiences, which we have, there's still, we all had a long process to get here. So just put yourself out there and do lots of getting involved and just traveling and asking people for connections.
Yeah, I'll say again, as kind of the representative here of people who had that Japanese nerdy pop culture interest before going to Japan. These are great things to have in your toolbox to talk to people about, to connect with them about. But anime, manga, video games, these things aren't a monolith. And in any job that you're going to do in Japan, if you pursue that, there has to be a balance of understanding that Japan's not a monolith. It is a multifaceted culture. Just like we would say, we would scoff if someone said, do you eat a hamburger every day and put on your cowboy hat to go to your American job at the ranch? No, that's the same thing for Japan. So having an understanding of balance between the fun interests pop culture side, but also understanding and being willing to engage with Japan for its history, its culture, and the multitudes of people that exist there beyond just the nerdy interests. Additionally, if you are able to go to Japan and you do find yourself engaging with the culture, the biggest lesson that I carried with me was try everything once. And I say that as someone who was placed in Beppu City, which is a huge hot spring onsen resort town. I didn't think I would be comfortable getting into a bath naked with strangers. And it became one of my favorite things to do and engage in my town and this thing that it's so proud of. So I ate tons of different weird foods that I never would have thought that I would try. I've had a bunch of different kinds of meat raw that I never thought I would. And all of these things sparked conversation, made friendships, and gave me, interesting new facets to myself that I could carry forward. So that is my biggest advice is don't be afraid to try everything once and really engage with the people and the culture.
I would say, there's a saying that has been part of the JET program ever since I was on it, and it's kind of become a mantra, is that every experience is different. Every experience is different. I think each student who's interested in Japan and who's interested in going to live in Japan, you're on your own path. Okay, you're walking your own path. And if you're interested in Japan and if you have a passion for it, that's good enough. Try not to compare yourself to other people. Don't say, oh, well, that person, he's been studying Japanese for years. He's very fluent, interested in Japan for years, and I'm not, so I'm not good enough. No, don't compare yourself to other people. You're on your own path. Your experience is different from everyone else. For many years, I would participate in the interviews for people going on the JET program. Okay, so like on the panels, they would have someone from the Japanese consulate, they'd have like a Japanese professor and a JET alumni. And I did that for many years. And I interviewed that second round, who would decide who would be going to Japan. Okay. And there were so many instances where there would be a student, there would be someone, an applicant who had taken several years of the Japanese language, who was totally into Japan, had been to Japan before, and there'd be someone else who hadn't taken Japanese classes, someone who'd never been to Japan, and yet we chose that student who had never been to Japan, who didn't take Japanese classes. We said, this is the kind of person we want on the JET program. This is the kind of person we want representing the United States. This is the kind of person who we think would do really well in their community in Japan. That's not to say that if you study Japanese a lot, if you speak really well, and if you've been interested in Japan, that's not to say that that's a liability. But it's also not to say that someone who doesn't have that experience is not good enough. Okay. Remember, you're all walking your own path, to Japan. So don't compare yourself to other people. If you have a passion for Japan, if you want to go there, go for it, and do it. So, don't let yeah, don't compare yourself to other people. Don't let what other people have done or haven't done. Don't let that discourage you. Okay. Walk your own path.
Yes, exactly that. Walk your own path. You're going to have a lot of unique opportunities. And I think the more that you're able to engage with the JET community that you have during the program, as well as the local community, the more involved you become, the more enriching your experience is going to be. And so, right away when we landed in Aomori, it was during the summer, and our first week we're getting dressed up to jump in a parade as part of our Nebuta festival, and just immediate like go for it, and in Aomori where we were, so Tesia did curling. I joined a taiko group with some of the other JET foreigners, and so there was another festival called Tachi Nebuta where we were, which Tesia has the poster behind her, which is pretty cool. So we would walk through the festival drumming. As I said, I grew up in Southern California, and I moved to an area that has snow 7 months out of the year. I learned to snowboard. The onsens are there. You just learn to get comfortable talking with grandmas in a tub in the middle of the night, the more, I don't know, it's just such unique, fascinating experiences that, again, you wouldn't have otherwise. So similar to what Becca said, just try anything once, get involved as much as you can in the local community. I had a family, I went every week, we practiced, so I learned Japanese through connecting with them. They cooked me dinner. So I had like a little local family that I connected with. Teaching English classes, taking Japanese classes, just integrating yourself into the community and the culture as much as possible, and just being open-minded. And I think just my last point will be something that we're all quote unquote guilty of, I think as Westerners, is my way is the right way. And when you kind of go into a new culture, especially one that is 180 degrees different than what you grew up as your norm of culture, having this mindset that that's weird, that's strange, why do you do that? That doesn't make any sense. Don't do that. Why would, So we kind of have this mindset that our way is the right way. And when people or cultures don't meet that expectation, then we see it as bad or weird or whatever, however we label it. This is human nature, and it's fine that it happens, and it's also our responsibility to kind of check that and catch it and shift and be like, actually, I'm the guest in their culture, so therefore my mindset needs to be a little bit more open to understanding how they are interacting or engaging, and I need to be the one to adapt to their culture, not expect them to adapt to my expectation from a Western mindset. So just, jump in, get involved, and then just be aware of your mindset as you're encountering things that might be unique or different to what you are used to. So, yeah.
I love it, because your all going in is that, yes, every situation is different. Yes, this is your path. And that's why we bring in these voices, right? You can take bits and pieces, the things that work for you, that don't, because you are creating your path forward. And as they talked about, it does go into maybe you balance those hobbies that you have from home, those comforts you have from home, with trying something new, getting out there, getting into that tub, or practicing a new sport or hobby or music, or jumping into a festival saying, I'm going to try this. And I'm going to try this with an open mind and curiosity, not with that set mindset that this is how it should be, and I'm going to show you guys what this is all about, right? We are cultural ambassadors, as Erin mentioned. Yes, you want to talk about that and show your culture in a subtle way, right? Not in that aggressive way, so that you can continue to make those connections. And talking about that, we have come to the last question. I know this hour has flown by. So this is the last one for you. What would you tell a student who feels drawn to Japan but says, what should my next step be right now? What should I do right now? I know I really want to go. Give me some advice so that I can start this path forward. So, and you can mention that or any other closing comments you want to do. So I'll pass it over to Tesia.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, you're here. That's the best first step, but just find what you're passionate about and just do it. If it's cooking, go find a cooking school. If it's anime, manga, just listen to it. That's how you learn Japanese. I wasn't good at reading and writing. Well, I was reading and writing before Japan, then listening and speaking there by watching TV and getting involved. So just figure out what aspect you like and do it and ask for help and ask around. You'll find a lot of people willing to help you.
Yeah, I think one thing, as I've been involved with the JET interview process as well, if you're going to be pursuing JET as your path to get to Japan, it is a teaching program and it's an exchange program. So number one is there has to be a level of understanding that you're going to be a teacher to young students. So you better enjoy hanging out with young students. You better enjoy teaching. So one thing that you can do to prepare is take teaching courses or work at summer camps, take volunteer opportunities, anything that shows that you have experience working with young kids and that you're not afraid to dive into those waters. But additionally, I think the other point I would make is similar to what Tesia said. I went into Japan with a sociology major in Japanese studies. I came out pursuing something completely different because I had a hobby and passion that I found a professional avenue towards that I was able to really delve into while I was in Japan. So have an open mind to change, but don't forget that your hobbies and the things that you're interested in, just as you would encourage your students to pursue their interests and find a way to work that into the professional sphere, I would encourage you as well to find the ways that you can marry what you're interested in with a professional career in Japan or after Japan.
I'd say think of how you want to go to Japan. Think about how you want to go there. Now, of course, we have the JET program, which is a wonderful pathway to go into Japan. And from JET, so many different things can happen after JET. But as wonderful as JET is, as Becca said, it's a job. You're a teacher. It's a teaching job. That's a job. If you don't like teaching, if you don't like kids, you probably shouldn't do the JET program. Okay. So there's JET, but there are other ways to go. And you might maybe maybe you just want to visit there, maybe you just want to go and take a trip or I mean, there are many ways you can go to Japan. I also want to point out that it doesn't have to be right now. Right now, there's time. You have time, JET program, I guess technically there's really no age limit. There used to be, but I think they got rid of it technically. But usually up until your 30s, your late 30s, I've had Jets when I interviewed them who were in their 40s who went on Jet, so you have time if you want to do the jet thing, or however you want to go to Japan, you have time. Maybe you want to do things here first. Maybe you want to go to school here first, or well, you have to go to college, of course, to go to Jet, but maybe after college, maybe you want to go to grad school, maybe you want to work or something, so don't feel this pressure that I have to go now, or this opportunity to experience Japan will be lost to me. You have time, so keep that in mind, I'd say as well. So that's my advice. Okay.
And I think as a high schooler, there's still a lot that you're figuring out about yourself. And so being gentle with yourself during this time. And I think just trying to put yourself in opportunities where you can experience or explore a little bit more about Japanese culture. So whether that's through the pop culture, music, video games, manga, etc. But I think personal connections are really critical, really helpful. So if you're going to university, there's probably going to be students from Japan there, or some kind of organization that you can join, that you can interact with students to just learn about them as people and their experiences growing up and what was their life like. And I think finding similarities, finding those connections, because at the end of the day, we're all human, you know, and human connection really is the most beautiful, I think, experience we can have. So finding ways to integrate into the culture now through personal experiences, whether it's eating food or entertainment or people, finding friends that you can connect with, and being curious, asking questions, being open-minded. Everyone likes to talk about themselves, so ask others about their stories growing up, and you'll learn a lot.
I think that's perfect because that's just what we're doing too. We all love to share these stories, and this is part of your story, right? It is making connections. It is interacting. It is going out and seeing what is interesting to you, right? That's how you're going to find your passions. And as Tesia mentioned, finding your why, right? All of them talked about why do you want to go to Japan? And you can continue to develop that. It's something really important because that can shape your mountain peaks. It can shape what you want to build in order to go that next step, whatever job that might be in Japan or whatever your next step might be, and know that that can build your skill sets for the future. Now, talking about building skill sets for the future, we do have another session coming up. So that is 2 weeks from now. We are going to talk about reflection, advice, and next steps. We have more presenters coming on. Grace is going to talk about being a host family sister, talking about learning Japanese in high school and college. Genevieve's going to talk about a little bit more of wellness. We have another professor, Stephen from Hirosaki Gakuen University, is going to talk about those next steps as well. So again, all these different voices giving their paths, what worked for them, what didn't work, right? There's highs and lows, as Tesia mentioned, right? It's life, right? But how do we deal with that? What skill sets do we need to deal with it, to be adaptable, to be flexible, to look at those perspectives, right? To grow as human beings? That's going to be really important. And they're going to talk about those next steps. So you take bits and pieces to create your own path, because this is your story that you're creating. Now, talking about your story, curiosity matters. You don't need a full plan right now. You don't need to have it all figured out. One step leads to the next, and just stay curious. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our presenters. Super inspiring, fantastic stories. We hope to see you guys in the next session, and good luck as you continue to build your path forward. So thank you again, and we'll see you again soon.